Bonsai! I'm the Cobra Kai kid, and I just watched More Than Miyagi, the Pat Morita Story. More Than Miyagi is a documentary about Pat Morita, or as us Karate Kid and Cobra Kai fans know as the actor of Mr. Miyagi. But what I really loved about this documentary, and the title itself, More Than Miyagi, says it all, that this documentary is more than just Mr. Miyagi. The documentary covers Pat Morita and the Karate Kid, but it also covers a lot of his career and personal life. Before the Karate Kid, Pat Morita was in a lot of sitcom shows, and one especially that he was most well known for was Happy Days, which went from 1974 to 1984. Pat was also a stand-up comedian, so this combination of his stand-up comedy and acting in these sitcoms represented him to the world as a comedy actor. When the Karate Kid was first being developed and they were looking for an actor to play Mr. Miyagi, an executive producer suggested to Jerry Weintraub, the main producer of the Karate Kid, that Pat Morita would be good for the role. However, Jerry completely disagreed and did not want Pat Morita playing the serious character of Mr. Miyagi because Pat was known for his role as Arnold in Happy Days, which was a very funny role, and he didn't think that based off of that performance that he could pull off a Mr. Miyagi role. In the film industry, this was known as typecasting, which was talked a lot about in this documentary. In typecasting, an actor is defined based on one of their most prominent roles. The documentary explored the struggles for Pat as an actor to break that barrier and to show producers that he wasn't just Arnold from Happy Days, and that he could expand his acting and play roles much larger than that and with different context. It was actually Pat E. Johnson, the stunt coordinator of the Karate Kid, who helped Pat Morita to secure the role. He told Jerry that he would work with Pat, and they did. So Pat Morita, Pat E. Johnson, and Karate Kid director John G. Avildsen actually got together to work on the scene from the beginning of Karate Kid 2, which was actually supposed to be the end of Karate Kid 1, where Mr. Miyagi put Kreese to his knees and said the whole "mercy is for the weak. We do not train to be merciful," and then does the honk on him. Jerry Weintraub ultimately loved the performance, and it was because of John Avildsen and Patty Johnson's help that Pat Morita did end up securing the role as Mr. Miyagi. The documentary explored a lot of the hardships that Pat Morita has faced, but also shows what he has done for the Japanese American culture. Especially with the role of Mr. Miyagi, it was a groundbreaking moment for cinema that really impacted it back then and also today. And Mr. Miyagi wasn't just teaching Daniel, but Daniel was also teaching Mr. Miyagi. A combination of things from the Karate Kid, especially the Karate Kid, was very groundbreaking in the 1980s and really diminished that stereotype with Asian actors. Now, towards the end of the documentary, it started to get a lot more serious and explore Pat Morita's home life and some of the problems he faced, especially with his addiction to alcohol. Some of you may be shocked by this. I know I definitely was, because Pat Morita, and they even mentioned this in the documentary, was very good at hiding his drinking problem, but he would say that he would be drunk every day. However, when you see him in interviews and you see his acting roles, you would have never thought this. So this was really crazy that the documentary revealed that, and they even revealed that he started drinking at the age of 12. So the fact that he was able to live 73 full years is absolutely crazy, because he started drinking at a very young age, and he tried to go to rehab, but it never ultimately ended, and he was an alcoholic for most of his life. His friends and family were trying to help him with his problem and addiction because it was having a major impact on his home life, but also on his career. As he got older and as the drinking got worse, it became a lot harder for him to disguise the fact that he was drinking. It started to become very apparent, and he still needed to do some acting jobs and he needed the money, but ultimately it was his addiction that led to the end of his career. Pat had a lot of ups and downs in his career and his life. He even left the show Happy Days, which was doing very well, to pursue a starring role as a main character in his own show, Mr. T and Tina, which only aired 5 episodes before getting canceled. But 30 plus years later, it was ultimately the 4 Karate Kid movies that really solidified Pat Morita as this very talented actor. And what I think is so great about these Karate Kid movies and what he did in them was it made people want to go back and watch his other projects, especially me. I would have not known about Pat Morita if it wasn't for the Karate Kid. So seeing the Karate Kid made me want to watch this documentary, and now I'm finding out all about his life and his other projects. And I'm definitely going to be checking out Happy Days and some of his other work, because Pat Morita is a very talented actor, and it's also pretty cool to see his wide range of acting. You know, he was a comedian in these other shows, and even though Mr. Miyagi is a bit of a comedian in the Karate Kid movies, it was a very different thing, as in some of these other shows he would be acting in a sitcom where he would just have to be straight on funny, which Mr. Miyagi was very serious for most of the time. The documentary was very powerful and emotional, and it definitely got a couple tears out of me. They talked about Pat Morita's career and home life while also expressing the issues of racism and abuse on alcohol. Pat Morita's story just goes to show that sometimes what you see isn't always the truth, and you can't just assume something about someone from watching a movie they were in or watching an interview. You really don't know the full story unless you're that person. And if you've just watched your Karate Kid movies or Happy Days, I'm sure you would never know that Pat Morita had this drinking problem. It's a very serious thing, and I think it was very important that this documentary highlighted the dangers of alcohol abuse. But that will never be what Pat Morita was known for. People will not remember him for that, but what he did to them personally from his performance in these shows and these movies. I definitely know how watching the Karate Kid movies and Mr. Miyagi made me feel. I take his lessons about finding balance in my life every single day, and that's how I'll remember him by. And then when you look at a show like Cobra Kai, where unfortunately Mr. Miyagi and Pat Morita are not alive and are not in the show, you do feel like they are in the show because of how the writers include Mr. Miyagi's presence. Through Daniel teaching Miyagi-Do karate and all the callbacks to Mr. Miyagi, to even going to Okinawa and exploring Mr. Miyagi's origin story, Mr. Miyagi has one of the biggest roles in Cobra Kai, and it's so beautiful that they're doing that even with Pat Morita not there to physically portray Mr. Miyagi. The character feels so alive because we're always learning new things about him, and because he's such a big part of the story. And wherever Pat is now, I'm sure he is very proud of Cobra Kai and its success, and how they were able to revive the Karate Kid franchise and also revive his character and use him to teach a whole new generation of kids like myself. And major credit to Cobra Kai creators John Hurwitz, Hayden Schlossberg, and Josh Heald for taking that impossible task and accomplishing it. More Than Miyagi currently has a 100% Rotten Tomato and 100% audience score rating, which is no surprise because this film is absolutely genius. If you didn't know too much about Pat Morita's life prior to The Karate Kid like me, I would recommend watching this film. It's definitely really cool, and you'll see that while he does have some similarities to the character of Mr. Miyagi, he's also his own person. He is Pat Morita. Watch More Than Miyagi now on YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, and other platforms. Make sure to subscribe to the channel now and turn on all notifications to never miss a video. Hit that like button and share the video with your fellow Cobras and Miyagi-Dos. I'll see you all next time on Cobra Kai Kid, and in honor of More Than Miyagi, wax on, wax off.
Pat Morita. Mr. Pat Morita. Oh, yeah.
Pat Morita, ladies and gentlemen.
Lenny Bruce's mother named him the Hip Nip, but he hung on because now all of a sudden he had an angle.
He would tend to do the same show over again. And then he couldn't figure out why he wasn't getting laughs.
I don't think he paid much attention to the rules of the game. You know, kind of did what he wanted to do.
He really embraced the things that many of us run away from. He ran to it.
He opened for Vic Damone, Connie Stevens, and Red Fox, who put him on his show.
He was just a lovely, lovely man.
Pat went on and became a huge star.
And he created one of the iconic characters in American cinema.
One thing I learned with comics is they were actually some of the most unhappy, tortured people, and their comedy comes from pain.
I mean, he was in a cast for like 9 years, from his knees to like his neck for his childhood.
The day he gets out, he walks into a war.
He had a lot of inner demons. He struggled a lot with depression, and he was drinking too much. I think he was doing too much drugs.
He was drinking so much that I went to the line producer and said, I'm scared to death, he's gonna fall off a cliff.
And he was stumbling and he fell flat on his face.
That was when it really, really hit home and he realized, I've got a big problem.
That entire chapter of my life changed me forever.